"You're not needed for the meeting." That's what Greg said to me with his smug little MBA smirk, like he was handing me a coupon for free irrelevance. It wasn't even subtle. He leaned against my cubicle wall, arms crossed like he'd just outmaneuvered a Bond villain. "It's more strategic now," he added, dragging out that last word like it required a license to pronounce. "The execs want to keep it tight. You get it." Oh, I got it all right. I got it the same way you get food poisoning, slowly at first, then all at once. Here's the part that really cooked my bacon. I wasn't just some note-taking assistant who brought coffee and nodded through slide decks. I was the one who built the financial reporting system he was now parading into the boardroom like a prize hog at the county fair. 6 months of backbreaking cleanup, fixing billing screw-ups that predated Greg's spray-tan career, automating vendor logs the company had all but abandoned, rebuilding dashboards that used to crash if you sneezed too hard. I had quietly pulled this company's spine back into its body, while Greg learned how to pronounce pivot. And now I wasn't needed? He tapped my desk twice with his knuckles like I was a toaster oven, said don't stress it, and walked off adjusting his collar. I stared at the screen a long time after he left, my hands frozen over the keyboard. A cursor blinked. A cell in a spreadsheet flickered with a background refresh. My face must have looked like a taxidermied deer, alert but already gutted. Now, I know this probably sounds familiar. If it does, hit that subscribe button and give it a like. It genuinely helps the team keep telling these stories. 90% of folks just listen and vanish like Greg at 4:59 p.m., but showing love keeps us caffeinated and mildly sane. Anyway, back to the show. I didn't yell, didn't slam drawers, didn't email HR with a list of bullet points in red. I simply exhaled once, long and slow, and minimized my work window. If they didn't need me for the strategic meeting, then they didn't deserve to see the rest of the playbook either. Because what Greg and his little clown car of self-importance didn't know was that I'd been running a shadow system this entire time. Not a secret one, just separate, parallel. I started building it out of necessity, mostly because the company's official platforms were a flaming landfill of broken scripts and conflicting logic. So I asked for sandbox access, set up my own environment, and got to work after hours. No one cared, no one asked. It wasn't integrated with production yet, so in their eyes, it didn't exist. Until it did. I cleaned up invoice line items, fixed cascading logic errors that were sending duplicate charges to clients, and even wrote an auto-reconciliation script that ran laps around the outsourced finance team's monthly close. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. The system was clean, traceable, elegant even in a nerdy kind of way. And the kicker? I did it all under my own name, on a trial dev license I'd requested back when nobody gave a damn what I was doing. Greg used that data. Of course he did. Copied and pasted my graphs into his fancy slideshow, probably added some buzzwords he stole from a LinkedIn carousel post. But it was my foundation, my work, and now he was about to present it to the board like he'd summoned it from the heavens. I didn't stop him. Instead, I opened a private browser tab and logged into a different dashboard, one that didn't feed into the company's servers, one that was only accessible through a very specific client login. Then I shut my laptop. I stood, smoothed the wrinkles out of my blazer, and tucked my notepad into my bag. No drama, no flailing. I walked down the hallway like it was just another Tuesday. Someone from HR said, "Heading out early, Carol?" And I smiled. Yeah, apparently I'm not needed. I stepped into the elevator, watched the doors close, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Weightless. The kind of freedom that doesn't come with vacation days or 3-day weekends. The kind that sneaks in through the cracks when you realize no one's watching the back door. And I wasn't walking away. I was walking toward something. Something they would regret not seeing until it was far, far too late. The first time I realized the system was bleeding, I was elbow deep in a vendor reconciliation report that read like a ransom note, numbers duplicated, columns misaligned, and someone had manually typed fix later in a cell that was supposed to auto-populate tax values. I remember staring at it for a good 30 seconds before laughing out loud. Not a cute chuckle either, one of those unhinged, exhausted laughs that sounds like it might end in tears or a fist through drywall. That was 6 months ago. Nobody else saw it because nobody else looked. The accounting team would throw spreadsheets into the void, then slap a bow on the monthly report, and pray no client noticed the decimal shift in their service fees. Our CTO, bless his fantasy football brain, once said, "We're not perfect, but we get the job done." Right. Except the job involved overbilling two of our biggest clients by a combined $84,000 last quarter alone. So I stopped fixing the symptoms and started building a cure. At first, it was just a sandbox, something to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. I spun up a test instance under a free developer license tied to my personal email. I pulled in clean data from raw exports, no pivots, no nonsense, and wrote scripts to cross-check invoice items against our actual service logs. The first time it reconciled with 100% accuracy, I felt high. Like float out of your body, I just solved a Rubik's Cube blindfolded kind of high. I stayed up until 2 a.m. watching the data flow cleanly through the pipeline, like I'd cleared a blood clot no one else even knew was there. I didn't tell anyone. Why would I? The last time I flagged a billing discrepancy, Greg said, and I quote, "Let's not get too in the weeds, Carol. The client hasn't complained." But they had, just not to him. It was during a quarterly call with Langford Medical Group, one of our biggest accounts, that something interesting happened. Their CFO, a sharp woman named Helena, said, "Strange, we're seeing two versions of your reporting, one from Greg and one that came via a private dashboard link last week. That one's significantly more accurate." I nearly dropped my coffee. I hadn't meant for the client to see the real dashboard. I'd sent the link to one of their junior analysts I used to work with, just asking for feedback. Apparently, it traveled upstream. Helena didn't sound angry, if anything. She sounded intrigued. "Who built the second one?" she asked casually. I paused, then answered truthfully. "That was me." There was a silence on the line, then a soft hum. 2 weeks later, she asked if I'd be interested in a side conversation about systems improvement. I played it cool, but inside, I was already building the next phase of my plan. See, I hadn't intended to leave. Not originally. I just wanted the work to matter. But when I realized Greg was going to walk into that year-end meeting and strut around with his puffed-up chest full of my metrics, it hit me. I was building cathedrals in the dark while he was spray painting vision on the side of a porta potty. So I started moving in silence. Every night after work, I refined the back end. I ran simulations. I tested invoice correction tools. I even added a visual layer with color-coded indicators for payment timing and contract drift. I called it Project Lazarus because it brought dead systems back to life. Cheesy, I know, but it made me smile every time I typed it. Eventually, Helena connected me with their internal IT director. We had a few video calls. I showed him what the system could do. He called it a small miracle. I told him I was just doing what our company didn't care enough to try. Then came the ask. Would I be willing to consult with Langford full-time, build the system from scratch properly this time, and help them own their infrastructure end-to-end? The offer wasn't just a step up. It was a staircase out of the whole damn building. I didn't say yes immediately. I scheduled a vacation day the week before year-end. Officially, it was for personal rest and reflection. Unofficially, it was to meet with Helena and sign a conditional offer. The terms were simple. I'd lead their digital transformation arm as Director of Systems Integration. My salary would triple. I'd have a team, and best of all, I'd own the architecture. My hands, my name, my terms. Back at the office, Greg was busy printing his little deck for the boardroom, pasting screenshots of my work into bullet point slides labeled operational improvements. He had no idea that the very system he was about to stake his reputation on was already gone, transferred, rehomed, and waiting for him to crash it live. The morning of my vacation day, I showed up 15 minutes early. Not because I wanted to savor the stale office coffee or admire the flickering fluorescent bulb above the copy room, no. I wanted to watch. Watch them scurry around like ants who didn't know someone had already sprayed the perimeter. Greg was in early too, pacing outside the glass-walled conference room, rehearsing his executive tone. You know, the one half Wall Street, half game show host. His tie was crooked. His slides were printed, 3-hole punched and clamped in a binder labeled FY Strategy Review. My name wasn't on a single one of those pages, but my fingerprints were on every chart. I walked past him with my laptop bag over one shoulder, a neutral expression on my face, not even a nod in his direction. He paused for a second like he wanted to say something, then smirked and went back to his reflection in the glass. Down the hallway, my desk still had 2 post-its stuck to the monitor. One said call IT and the other just said Q for close. I peeled them off slowly, one by one, and dropped them in the trash. No dramatic shredding, no symbolic final middle finger. Just clean, efficient closure. I logged in, cleared cookies, saved my final files into a neutral archive, logged out of everything, Slack, Outlook, the VPN, even the janky timesheet app that hadn't worked right since March. I wiped my browser history, but not too aggressively. Let them find the breadcrumbs. Let them think they knew the route. Then I initiated one last sync. I'd left them the appearance of functionality. Not a system crash, not a hard wipe, just a fade. My dashboard would still appear to update for a few more cycles. But I buried a redirect notice 2 layers deep in the audit trail logs under the system status monitor. No alerts, no pop-ups, just a quiet line of code that said, redirect active, see external instance. If anyone actually read the logs, really read them, they'd find a link, a login screen, and a polite message: this instance is no longer maintained by the originating engineer. Please contact Carol H. at Langford Systems Group for access to the updated environment. A digital forwarding address. Passive, professional, delicious. I zipped up my laptop sleeve, grabbed my 3 black notebooks, the kind no one ever asked to read, and slid them into my bag. My little paper vaults of diagrams, flowcharts, and shorthand no one but me could decipher. I'd once asked Greg if he wanted access to my working notes. He said, "Nah, we're good. I just need the graphs, figures." As I passed the kitchen, one of the junior analysts, Maya, sweet girl, newish, looked up from her yogurt and said, "You okay, Carol?" I smiled. Never better. She blinked, unsure whether that meant I was off to cry in my car or burn the place down. I wasn't doing either. I was onboarding. Langford's building sat 12 blocks away, tucked into the tech corridor near the river, newer, cleaner, with real plants and floor-ceiling windows that didn't fog up like neglected aquariums. When I stepped into the lobby, the receptionist greeted me by name. "Welcome, Miss Harper. They're expecting you, expecting me, not my data, not my work product. Me." Upstairs, Helena was already waiting with a smile and a badge that read Director, Systems Integration. The photo wasn't great. I looked slightly dazed, but it was mine. She handed me a tablet with onboarding steps, then waved me into a glass-walled conference room overlooking the skyline. "We'll do formal intros next week," she said. "But first, I'd love a walkthrough of your Lazarus system. Our team is eager to see what you've got under the hood." I powered up my laptop and clicked through the familiar interface. It was all there: clean code, intuitive flow, predictive reports that actually predicted things. My baby. Helena watched silently for a while, then said, "This is impressive." I nodded. They never even asked how it worked. She raised an eyebrow, their loss. Back at the old office, Greg was probably halfway through his deck by now, sweating through his shirt while explaining a system he didn't understand, hoping no one asked why one of the charts hadn't refreshed since Tuesday. He'd taken my seat at the table. Let him have it, because I wasn't sulking. I wasn't sabotaging. I was building. And for the first time in years, I wasn't working behind someone else's name. I was walking in the front door, not begging for a seat at the back. Greg was my replacement? Cute. He was about to find out what happened when you inherit a machine you can't operate, and the mechanic moves to a better garage. Greg hit the projector remote with the kind of confidence reserved for men who have never been told no without a wink attached. The room dimmed. Other chairs creaked as the board leaned in. He cleared his throat, clicked to the first slide, and opened his mouth like he was about to sell a cure for death. This year's financial streamlining has been driven by a renewed focus on operational transparency, and click next slide, strategic metric alignment, particularly in our client-facing systems. On screen, one of my dashboards, same color scheme, same category breakdowns, slightly uglier font. Guess Arial felt more executive to him. At that exact moment, I was across town sipping mediocre conference room coffee with a Langford junior dev who was politely trying not to fanboy over my Lazarus interface. "Wait," he said, leaning closer to the tablet. "It does multi-channel discrepancy detection?" In real time, I smiled, with variance alerts on threshold breach. "Just integrated last night." Meanwhile, back in Greg's rented spotlight, the screen hiccuped. Not dramatically, just enough to reload a single graph. But the numbers were wrong. Stale actually, Q3 values instead of Q4. A tiny thing, easily glossed over if you didn't know what was coming. Greg noticed, you could tell by the twitch in his left eyebrow. He clicked again. Slide 6, client invoice accuracy. The bar chart loaded, then blinked, then dropped half its labels. Red bars bled into blank axes. He stared. The CFO tilted his head. "That can't be right." Greg laughed awkwardly. "Looks like a rendering issue." One sec, he alt-tabbed, clicked, reloaded, nothing. The data was misfiring now, whole sections grayed out like a blackout had swept across his credibility. Someone from Langford joined the call. Helena's voice crackled through the speakerphone like God herself had shown up with a clipboard. "Hi all, just hopping in for the dashboard review. Quick note, a recent reports show an odd drop in billing transparency. Can someone explain why we're seeing October's data repeated for December?" Silence. Greg's eyes ping-ponged across the room, desperate for a lifeline. The CTO checked his iPad, frowning. Another client rep joined the call. "Same issue here," he said. "We ran a reconciliation test and came up 22 grand short. Are we supposed to be using the strategic metrics portal or something else? Because our contact said that system's no longer live." Greg blanched. "Your contact?" A pause. "Yes," the rep continued. "We've been coordinating with someone off-site to rebuild the dashboards, Carol H. something. She's been extremely helpful. You could have punched Greg in the ego and gotten less of a reaction." His jaw slackened. He blinked twice. Behind him, the slide auto-refreshed and froze entirely. "Data unavailable. Please verify system integrity." The CEO, up until that point quietly observing, leaned forward with his elbows on the table. "Greg," he said flatly, "who has access to the real-time environment?" Greg stammered. It should be ops and finance." "Maybe Carol, but she's on leave?" "Leave," the CEO repeated, his voice dipped in suspicion. "She didn't request leave. She marked her time as PTO. For a single day." Greg swallowed. The CFO tapped something on his laptop, then stiffened. "Sir," said to the CEO, "I'm in the logs. There's been a change in admin credentials 2 days ago. A transfer request was approved from a non-company domain, Carol Harper at Langford Sysgroup.com." A pause, everyone turned to Greg. Helena's voice cut through again, calm and clinical. "To clarify, we did not request access to your system. Carol offered to build ours from scratch, entirely new infrastructure. Clean, reliable." Another voice piped in, "Legal, maybe, or IT. We're showing backend API calls failing across all client dashboards. Looks like they're still trying to sync from her environment, but it's been locked. Greg looked like someone had just asked him to explain quantum physics with a crayon. He flipped his laptop closed with a little too much force. I need a moment. He stood, walked to the hallway, and didn't come back for 8 minutes. In my office across town, I leaned back and let the hum of validation fill the silence. My phone lit up twice, 2 missed calls from a number I recognized, then 4 more, then 14. I didn't answer. The Langford dev looked up from the screen and asked, "Do you want us to notify your old team about the client portal migration?" I laughed softly. "Oh, I think they've noticed." The first call came in just as I was tightening the lid on my thermos. Unknown number. Straight to voicemail. The second one buzzed while I was reviewing a hiring pipeline with Helena's HR lead. Third, I muted the phone entirely. By the time the 10th call came through, this time from our old operations director, who hadn't said 2 words to me in 6 months, I just started stacking the notifications like little digital trophies. I wasn't being petty. I was busy. We were in a closed-door strategy session at Langford's downtown office, real wood paneling, filtered air, a view of the skyline instead of a parking lot full of vape smoke and broken dreams. Across from me sat the CFO, Helena, and their internal compliance counsel, all flipping through printed packets with my name on the cover page. Proposal for independent systems transfer. Carol Harper, head of systems integration. Not support staff. Not strategic adjacent. Head. I took a slow sip of coffee while the CFO pointed to page 13. Clause here confirms you built this under your own license. Yes, I nodded. Sandbox access through a dev program. Non-compensated hours, all under my personal credentials. And this, he said, tapping another page, is the letter from your former employer's IT director confirming they never formally migrated your test environment into production? Correct, I said. They used my outputs, never the system itself. Helena smiled. So in legal terms, the data was appropriated. But the platform itself? Never theirs. I said nothing, just handed her the pen. The final page bore a single line at the bottom. Effective immediately, all proprietary logic, architecture, and backend source associated with Project Lazarus is hereby transferred to Langford Systems Group. I signed it with a calm, clean signature. No loops, no flair, just fact. As the ink dried, my phone started buzzing again. 34 missed calls. Then 36, 40, 45, CEO, CFO. Greg's name even popped up once, which I'm sure cost him a rib. I imagined him pacing the office, shirt unbuttoned one notch too far, hair messier than usual, voice raised just a little too loud as he barked. Has anyone gotten her on the line? Someone probably suggested emailing me. Someone else probably muttered that I was on vacation. And all of them, by now, had seen the redirect notice in the audit logs, the one that led straight to Langford, the one that told them without an ounce of hostility that the system they'd bet their end-of-year pitch on now lived under a different roof. Their golden goose had crossed the street, and she had a badge with her name on it. Helena glanced at her watch. You'll want to take those calls eventually. I smiled. Eventually. Across the room, her assistant entered with a printed announcement draft. Langford appoints new head of systems integration. Carol Harper to lead data transformation initiative. She handed it to me. Would you like to approve the wording before we send it to the trades? I scanned the first paragraph. My eyes paused on the sentence. Formerly with Carden and Rowe, Carol brings a proven record of transforming operational chaos into structured, client-owned clarity. I handed it back. Looks good. Send it? Another buzz from my phone. 46. I powered it off completely. In the silence that followed, I let it hit me, not the stress or the weight of leaving, but the sheer, surreal rightness of it all. For the first time in years, I wasn't spinning gold for someone else's parade float. I wasn't duct taping a sinking ship. I was designing the future from the helm. And somewhere, in a panicked little boardroom with mismatched mugs and a dying printer, Greg was trying to explain how his charts collapsed, how the metrics vanished, how the client contacts all suddenly dried up. But he knew, they all knew, they weren't calling to offer apologies. They were calling because they were losing control of the very thing they thought they'd stolen. And I was busy building the next system. This time, with my name engraved in the code. The email came through at 7:03 a.m. Subject line in all caps like a tantrum in Helvetica. Urgent. Legal matter requiring immediate attention. Sender, legal department at Carden Rowe Biz. Recipients, me, my former boss, their CTO, and a junior paralegal who once complimented my banana bread but still marked my work emails as non-essential. The body read like someone had copy-pasted a cease and desist template, then added just enough passive-aggressive corporate flair to make it feel personal. It has come to our attention that you have engaged in the unauthorized use and transfer of intellectual property belonging to Carden and Rowe. Your actions have caused significant disruption to our client reporting infrastructure and may constitute grounds for legal action. You are hereby instructed to cease all development activity related to the aforementioned systems and respond within 24 hours regarding restitution. They CC'd my old manager, too, probably hoping I'd flinch. I didn't. Instead, I forwarded the email to Langford's general counsel and poured myself a second cup of coffee. 10 minutes later, I had a response drafted, tight, factual, lined with just enough legal teeth to shred their little PR fantasy apart. Subject, urgent. Legal matter requiring immediate attention attachments. IP Declaration Carol Harper PDF. Sandbox Term Clause 14B PDF. Access Logs Langford Onboarding PDF Dear Carden and Rowe Legal. Please be advised that the systems in question were developed entirely within a sandbox test environment, registered under my personal credentials, and accessed solely outside of compensated hours. As per the terms outlined in my original employment agreement, see Clause 14b, subsection 3, the company explicitly waived rights to any test systems not formally integrated into production environments within 90 days of their creation. The systems were never integrated. Furthermore, access to the external version was not provided to any third party without proper authorization. Your client, Langford Medical Group, entered into a separate agreement with me after independently verifying the efficacy and legality of the platform. Please see attached for documentation confirming the development timeline of said system, with timestamp commits showing non-business hours. Written confirmation from your own IT team that the system in question was never adopted for internal use. The original clause from my employment contract granting me retention rights over unintegrated platforms post 90-day threshold. I trust this will resolve your concerns. Sincerely, Carol Harper, Director, Systems Integration, Langford Systems Group. I didn't hear from them for 2 days. When they resurfaced, it wasn't with a lawsuit, it was with a press release. A limp attempt at narrative control, due to unforeseen technical issues. Carden and Rowe is conducting a thorough review of its data integrity protocols. We remain committed to serving our clients at the highest level. They never mentioned me by name, but in the quiet corners of LinkedIn, the whispers were loud enough. What happened at C&R? Why did Langford cut ties? Wasn't Carol the one who built that system? A few industry folks reached out privately. One even offered to connect me with their CTO in case you're still building. Greg, meanwhile, posted a painfully vague status update. Leadership is about owning the storm, even when the thunder's not your fault. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. He was still trying to salvage a story where he got to play victim. Still clinging to the idea that what I built had ever been theirs to begin with. But facts don't bend for feelings. I hadn't just followed the rules. I'd printed them out, highlighted the parts they forgot, and built an empire in the negative space between their apathy and their arrogance. The 90-day clause was real. I'd found it while combing through the fine print of my original contract, back when they were too busy circle backing and value-adding to notice the loophole wide enough to drive a new career through. They thought my silence meant surrender. It didn't. It meant preparation. By the time they tried to weaponize the narrative, I'd already buried the ammunition in paperwork so airtight it might as well have been shrink-wrapped. Let them tell whatever story they want. I wasn't interested in fighting for scraps. I had the whole damn bakery now. The termination notice hit their inbox at 9:17 a.m. sharp. Not a minute early. Not a second late. Subject, service termination, Langford Medical Group, 3 tidy paragraphs. No theatrics, just surgical clarity. Due to ongoing data inconsistencies and persistent security concerns surrounding your reporting infrastructure, Langford Medical Group is formally ending our service agreement with Carden and Rowe, effective immediately. Please consider this notification binding and final. No room for debate. No PR whitewash. Just a scalpel through the artery of their Q1 projections. I didn't get a copy, of course, not officially, but Helena sent me a quick Slack message that morning with a single sentence. It's done, we're out, followed by a popcorn emoji. The fallout started quietly, an earthquake with no sound, only motion. First, Greg disappeared from the company website. His photo was there one day, half-shadowed under the banner of VP, Strategy and Analytics, and gone the next. No farewell post, no LinkedIn eulogy, just a silent purge. Someone had scraped his bio and replaced it with a broken image icon. Fitting. Then the CFO posted a canned retirement message. After a rewarding 18 years, I've decided to take some much-needed time with family translation. He walked the plank in a tie and loafers while the board watched with crossed arms and legal counsel. Next came the leaks. Whispers from mid-level managers who'd been kept in the dark, but were now tasked with rebuilding trust and realigning priorities. I got screenshots from 2 former colleagues, one of a Slack thread where someone asked if the Lazarus system could be reverse engineered, and another from an email marked high priority that just read, "Has anyone spoken to Carol?" No, they hadn't. And they wouldn't. I was across town in a glass-walled corner room, assembling my new team from the ground up. A dev I'd worked with years ago, 2 analysts with brains sharp enough to split atoms, and a project manager who spoke fluent executive and bullshit in equal measure. We were onboarding fast. Langford didn't want a slow pivot, they wanted a public rebirth. Helena had already scheduled a press briefing, and I was set to walk through the new system live on camera, demoing the very dashboards Greg had once said were too technical for clients to navigate alone. Funny how fast the tone shifts when your paycheck depends on it. I watched the flames from a distance, impassive. Not gleeful exactly, just settled. They'd made their bed out of shortcuts and spin. I just left the lights on while they lay in it. But one message did give me pause. It came from an unknown number late in the evening. I almost deleted it without reading, assuming it was another spammy "we can grow your brand" text. But the preview caught my eye. We didn't know, we should have. The full message was short, stark. I was on the call that day. I saw what you built. I know now who was really holding it together. We didn't know, we should have. No name attached. No sender signature. But I recognized the writing style. It was one of the executives, the same one who, months earlier, had smiled politely through meetings while Greg answered questions I had solved 2 weeks prior. I stared at the message a long time before closing it. No response. What was there to say? That I forgave them? That I understood? I didn't. Understanding implies they were simply ignorant. But they weren't. They chose convenience. They chose volume over value. Greg was louder, brasher, and full of buzzwords they could regurgitate in boardrooms. I was the one they leaned on when the system cracked. I was the one they ignored once the cracks were filled. So no, I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up a beta version of our new reporting tool, and ran a simulation on Langford's Q1. The numbers gleamed, clean, fast, predictive. Error rate 0.002%. I sipped my tea, let them restructure, let them shuffle titles and fire middle managers and hire another Greg in a new blazer. It didn't matter anymore. The client had walked. And this time, they walked with me. The resumes landed in my inbox 3 minutes apart, like twin ghosts from a past life knocking softly on the door. Both were from Carden and Rowe. Both were people I used to eat soggy birthday sheet cake with in the break room. The first was Maya, sharp, dependable, always asked the right questions, even when it made Greg twitch. She was junior when I left, but not green. There was a hunger in her work, a quiet kind of excellence that didn't need permission to grow. The second was Darren, middle manager, slide deck enthusiast, the kind of guy who used value add as a noun and once said I was too operational to lead client calls. He'd signed his cover letter with ready to bring my leadership experience to a new, agile environment. I sat with both applications for a while. No emotion, just clarity. Maya's resume went to HR with a green flag and a short note. Offer, competitive, she's worth it. Darren's, I archived it without reply. There was no bitterness. No lingering rage, just a simple understanding. Some people helped build the house. Others just stood in the foyer waiting for the heat to kick on. And I wasn't hiring anyone else to freeload off the furnace. That same afternoon, I stepped into Langford's main executive suite to lead our system rollout walkthrough. The boardroom looked nothing like the beige, fluorescent lit tomb at Carden and Rowe. This room had texture. Polished oak table, soft lighting, screens embedded seamlessly into the walls. You could breathe here. Helena gave me a nod as I plugged in my laptop. All yours. I tapped the trackpad, and the Lazarus dashboard came to life, smooth, real-time, fully integrated with their procurement and billing pipelines. Color-coded trends, predictive analytics, drill-down capabilities that didn't require a 12-step training module. The CEO leaned forward. So we can trace vendor cost spikes back to the source? Down to the invoice line item, I said. And if a number doesn't make sense, the system highlights it, flags it, and links to the original contract for context. Helena added, all hosted internally. No third-party dependencies. No shadow IT. The COO whistled. We've never had this much visibility. That's because you were renting someone else's flashlight, I said. Now you own the power grid. They laughed. But it was the kind of laugh that said we've been in the dark too long. When the demo ended, there was a brief silence. Then applause, real applause, not the polite golf clap I was used to after presenting to execs who were only half listening. Helena came up after the meeting and said, you've built something permanent here. We want you to scale it, take it company-wide. I nodded, already drafting the roadmap. She smiled. Good, you've got the wheel now. Later that evening, back in my new office, the one with real walls, not dividers that barely reached your chin, I unpacked a few things. A photo of my parents. My ancient, cracked leather notebook, tucked in the side pocket of my laptop bag. A cream-colored envelope with gold trim. The invite, Carden and Rowe annual year-end celebration, still sealed, sent automatically by some office assistant or mail merge bought weeks ago before the collapse. I propped it against the windowsill next to the basil plant the office manager gave me as a welcome gift, not out of nostalgia, but as a quiet reminder. A symbol of all the places I no longer needed to be. Party where I was once told I should let Greg take the lead when clients are around. A celebration I helped earn, but was never invited to speak at. The envelope stayed there, unopened, unsigned. That night, I watched the lights flicker in the building across the river, Carden and Rowe's top floor still lit, probably in panic or paperwork. I imagined the execs huddled together, reworking client lists, nursing bruised egos and cold coffee. On my screen, Maya's onboarding form lit up with a cheerful green completed. I smiled. We weren't just rebuilding systems anymore. We were rebuilding standards. The building looks smaller now. Funny how that works, how the places that once towered over you start to shrink the moment you stop kneeling beneath them. Carden and Rowe's downtown office had once felt like a cathedral of power. Glass walls, stiff suits, hushed elevators. Today, it looked like a rental tux after prom, stiff, wrinkled, and pretending it hadn't been through hell. I arrived 12 minutes late, not out of spite, just clarity. The receptionist looked up, startled, then nodded as if remembering too late who I was. No badge needed this time. No nervous please sign here. Just a quiet they're expecting you, and the swipe of a visitor keycard that felt more like a formality than a form of access. The top floor still smelled the same, like recycled ambition and overbrewed coffee. But the energy, it had changed, less buzz, more static. Inside the boardroom, the faces around the table were strained, pale, diminished, like someone had unplugged their source code. The CEO was already standing when I entered. "Carol, thank you for coming." I didn't shake his hand. Just walked to the head of the table and dropped a slim binder in front of him. It landed with a clean thud that said, "This is the last favor you get." "Compliance audit," I said. "Current state versus required benchmarks." He opened it, scanned the first page, and visibly flinched. The others leaned in, CFO's replacement, a new VP of operations who looked like she'd aged 10 years and 10 days, and Greg's replacement, who had the hollow-eyed expression of someone realizing too late they'd inherited a haunted house. I remained standing. No PowerPoint. No preamble. "This is what you're dealing with," I said flatly. Broken data chains. Regular invoice logic. At least 3 external vendors pulling conflicting metrics, and no one monitoring which version of the truth your clients see first. The CEO cleared his throat. "We understand mistakes were made." I tilted my head. "Do you?" A silence that felt earned stretched across the room. He finally spoke again. "Can you help us recover?" I paused. Let the question hang. Then met his eyes with a look I reserved for system logs and liars. "You'll need to start," I said slowly, "by fixing the part where you called me unnecessary." He opened his mouth to respond, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain, but I was already reaching for my bag. I turned toward the door, then looked back one last time, and smiled, just faintly. "I don't do recovery," I said. "I build from scratch." No one moved, no one spoke. I walked out with the sound of silence chasing me down the hallway like a ghost they finally believed in. They'd lost the system. They'd lost the client. But more than anything else, they'd lost the one person who knew how to hold the whole damn thing together. And now, I was holding something else entirely. The future. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.